of the Republican woman, the 2020 election cycle resulted in a total of 31 House Republican women, a modest gain from their previous record of 25 and still dwarfed by the House Democratic Party's record 89 women. Women in both parties, like their male counterparts, are also more ideologically extreme than members in previous decades. But the impact of polarization has been most notable among Republican women, who had once been significantly more moderate than men in their party. Evidence shows that as moderate members have been replaced by more conservative members, House Republican women are now, in fact, ideologically indistinguishable from their Republican male colleagues. This book delves deeper into the gendered effects of polarization by examining how these institutional changes have affected the rhetoric and experiences of Republican women in the House of Representatives. As Republican congresswomen struggle to gain seats, grow further apart ideologically from their Democratic women colleagues, and operate in an increasingly partisan environment, I argue that it is important to develop a more nuanced understanding of the difference women make in Congress. Thus, rather than focusing on the legislative impact of Republican women, I examine the evolution of gender dynamics within the House GOP and how women navigate those dynamics. In moving beyond an analysis of legislative behavior, I further unveil the process through which women's representation occurs in a polarized congressional environment. As Karen Beckwith contends, asking about representation of women's interests requires that scholars ask about women's role in their own representation, including within legislatures as legislators themselves. Beckwith asks scholars to separate how female legislators act on behalf of women's interests from the way they act on behalf of themselves as women in a legislative institution. She writes, "It is reasonable to ask whether and under what conditions women in legislatures seek to advance their interests as women within the state venue in which they are situated, as well as to ask about their willingness to advance women's interests articulated by those outside the state. It is through an analysis of these dual acts of representation, representing the interests of women outside of Congress as well as their own institutional interests as congresswomen, that I illustrate the evolving role of women in Republican Party politics." The first half of this book discusses changes in the way Republican congresswomen define women's issues and claim to represent women. Whereas Democratic women senators, at their April 2011 press conference, emphasized funding for Planned Parenthood as a top priority, the Republican women of the House avoided the topic of abortion, choosing instead to speak about the consequences of government spending from a gendered perspective. This rhetoric was in line with GOP leadership's general messaging on the 2011 budget negotiations. "There's only one reason that we do not have an agreement as yet," Speaker Boehner stressed, "and that issue is spending." For Republican women in this partisan era, representing the interests of women is less about moderating the GOP's stances on conventional women's issues and more about using their gendered perspectives to advance conservative issues that align with their party's communication tactics. Examining exactly how their rhetoric has changed over time can shine new light on the way Republican congresswomen work on behalf of women. Building off this analysis of rhetorical shifts, the second half of the book focuses on changes in the way Republican women work together as women legislators. Through extensive interviews and case studies, I highlight the experiences of Republican congresswomen, their attempts to navigate existing gender dynamics, and the connection between rhetoric and institutional advancement. I show how Republican congresswomen have mobilized around their partisan gender identity, identifying and working together as Republican women in an attempt to gain visibility and institutional power within their party. I further uncover the dynamics that give Republican congresswomen opportunities to become